Hizmet movement here in a North American context does a very good job of welcoming people in, non-Muslims, and encouraging their understanding and appreciation of one of the world's fundamental and very important religions. The gentleman is a gentleman I have a lot of respect for, and what I've read and heard when he's spoken. As a charitable organization around education. Part of the Hizmet. My name is Adam Giambrone. I was a former Toronto City Councilor and the President and Chair of the Toronto Transit Commission, in addition to being the National President of Canada's official opposition in Parliament. I began my interaction with the Hizmet movement a number of years ago because they've been very active in Toronto in terms of promoting interfaith dialogue, and I guess they approached me at one point and I was very pleased to participate, and from that initial participation I've been able to work with them on events, both attending and participating in them, as well as going to Turkey on one of their study tours that they conducted a couple of years ago. The Hizmet movement for me is the movement that has promoted interfaith dialogue. It's promoted a cultural understanding between groups. Here in Toronto, these are values that we're very used to, but I think what they have done is opened up culture, religion, and a country, specifically Turkey, to a lot of people. And I think that there's a lot of value to that. And it's certainly been, while I did having worked in the Middle East for years, going back 15 plus years, I had an understanding of the region, not so much of Turkey. And at any one point, I enjoy talking and interacting with people. And so the Hizmet movement, I've seen a lot of value, both to myself personally, but also I watch how other people respond to it. And for me, that's pretty important. So I've been, I think, very lucky to have made that contact. He's a gentleman, Mr. Gülen is a gentleman who I have a lot of respect for, and I think from what I've read and what I've heard when he's spoken and his writings, he's a man with a lot of integrity. His life embodies the values that he has promoted, which I think are very important. I've seen how the Hizmet movement, through his guidance and through in Toronto, has really contributed to the community, and I know about the movement's involvement in Turkey in terms of charitable contributions. So as the leader of this group, he's somebody who has spent a lifetime dedicating himself really to the common good, and I think it's very admirable. I think the work that he's done in Turkey around, as a charitable organization, around education, working with kids, there are a lot of elements there very important. I think the work that he has done through the Hizmet movement to promote the interfaith dialogue, I think, is critically important. There's a lot of hotspots around the world today which could benefit from his philosophy of interfaith dialogue. I mean, two of them that come to mind are the challenges in the Central African Republic, the issues that are ongoing, unfortunately, right now in Israel and Palestine. These are predominantly disputes that, at the heart of it, come down to a lack of dialogue. And there are other challenges, but I think that those are examples where this type of dialogue would at least help. And I think I have a lot of respect for that. I also think that here in North America, there is traditionally less of an understanding of the Islamic culture, the Muslim contributions to the world culture, and I think the way the Hizmet movement has been able to present Islam, it's hard to do it uniformly because it's such a diverse religion with so many different parts and obviously different manifestations of it in terms of different cultures and countries. But I think the Hizmet movement here in a North American context does a very good job job of welcoming people in, non-Muslims, and encouraging their understanding and appreciation of one of the world's fundamental and very important religions. The Hizmet movement presents Islam in a way that North Americans, and specifically speaking in a Toronto context, Torontonians, can understand and appreciate. Again, it's hard to speak of Islam as one monolithic religion because there are so many different components and so many different expressions of it around the world. But I think, here in a Toronto context, people who are not familiar with it sometimes maybe not feel able to access it. And I think what the Hizmet movement has done through the interfaith dialogue has welcomed people in, let them understand, let them ask questions, participate in the events, and feel welcome. And that's the best way to get people talking, interacting, is to share their cultural traditions, the religious traditions, and I think that's really important. And it certainly is something we talk a lot about here in Toronto. It's very important, but this is a way that I think the Hizmet movement has contributed in a big way to Toronto society. The Hizmet movement has taken upon itself as one of its goals, and I understand there are a number, but one of its goals to specifically reach out to people who are not as familiar with the Islamic religion, but also the culture associated with it, and particularly with not a focus, but with an element towards Turkey. And I think that is important because I think it gives the opportunity for people to step in. Because I think it's hard if you're not familiar with a religion or a culture. I suppose you could go banging on the door or trying to find someone to let you in, and most people eventually probably could. But that's hard for a lot of people. And so what the Hizmet movement has done is it's made it easy for people and who want to have an understanding, who want to be part of different cultures, but it's made it easy for them. And as a result, I think you have a lot more people who are willing to do that and willing to participate. And I think that's fantastic. And I've seen this when I participate at events or talk to people who have participated in events for the first time associated with the Hizmet movement. They're at the beginning, they don't know what's going to get in, but when you talk to them after, people are very, very positive. In fact, I've never talked to anybody who's had a negative experience, and I think that speaks volumes to the contribution and to how it's presented. The Hizmet movement and the Muslims who participate in it, who choose to go out and have dialogue with other groups, is I think the ideal. I mean, I would, the more dialogue you can have, the more connection you have with people. I mean, really, when we say dialogue, it's a fancy word for just talking to people, right? I mean, people from different groups sharing, and when you know people. There's no differences when you just realize that everybody's actually just people and they have slightly different ways of doing it, but fundamentally people are people, and whether they be Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, whatever they are, whether they're from Canada or another country, the more contact, studies show this too, and just common logic shows it, that when you actually hang out with people and you have interaction with people, you realize that they're kind of just like you. It's just that they do things slightly differently, and other than that, there's no difference. So when there's a specific group that chooses to reach out, I think it's fantastic, and frankly, we need more of it around the world. And is one of the most important things for young people. Having good quality education that focuses both on the learning elements and values in society is very important. And from what I've seen, the Hizmet schools engender the same values that the Hizmet movement generally promotes around openness and dialogue, and and family as well as academics, and that's kind of what you want any school to do. So I think it's fantastic. It also here in Toronto, I think is great that people can be Canadian, can be Torontonians, but also can maintain a connection with their language, with their culture. There's no, for me, and I think for a lot of us here in Toronto, there's no controversy, there's no there should be no difference. You can be very strongly Canadian, Torontonian, and yet still have a strong connection with the culture, the language, your religion, and at the end of the day, I actually think that probably makes for stronger communities when people can feel comfortable in both and can be strong promoters of both perhaps their original culture and language, but also their new culture here in Toronto. For me, charity is obviously very important. The fact that the Hizmet Movement does it, I think, speaks to the values of Mr. Gülen and the members of the community. The fact that they're Muslim, in some ways, it doesn't matter because it goes back to the original values where we're all connected. I mean, I think it's very important. I think it's indicative of the movement that these charitable organizations occur both in Muslim communities and non-Muslim communities. But in some ways, I think it really is indicative of the people who choose to be a part of the Hizmet movement, that they're willing to take on a whole number of elements. And we talked earlier about education. We've talked about their commitment to interfaith dialogue, to human rights, to very fundamental values. And charity I think, is probably a natural extension to a lot of the people. They see that as, if you look at it comes from your values, and therefore it's logical. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's especially probably communicates a very important message to people around outside especially of Muslim countries. But I think it's at the end of the day, it's an important part of the movement.
I just think it's very intriguing and fascinating for someone to have started something that has spread throughout the world. And the people that I've encountered, I have never met Fethullah Gulen, but the people that I've met who are inspired by him inspire me.
Gülen is, in one short sentence, is considered by those of us from outside looking in, is a formidable ambassador interpreter of the most sublime, most authentic underpinnings of not just Islamic tradition, spiritual traditions.